Good afternoon to all of our merry Marvelites. Welcome to Marvel Movie Talk. Very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about Wandavision Episode 3, now in color. Also now in color, our friend Michael Shirley with some wonderful Polaris Lorna Dane hair. We always appreciate that.
Am I giving you Gifted vibes?
Yes. You're episode 2 of The Gifted when the green hair came back when she washed out the black hair dye. I hope we talk about The Gifted every week from here on in because
I hope we don't.
Somebody has to keep the memory alive. Also with us, as in recent weeks, Eric Connor, Count Eric Connor.
You're welcome to just call me Eric, though. It's okay, Christian. As a dude, you're allowed to allude to me by my actual name.
Is that stolen valor? Are you not really a count?
I'm filled with valor. I got this is my business.
And happy to have back on the show our friend Jeff Williams. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It's been a minute, but yeah, I'm glad I got to be back to talk about WandaVision, especially this episode, because there was a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things I loved.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the other guys in the audience know, I actually saw all 3 episodes last week, but could only talk about the first 2.
Yeah.
What I wanted to do was talk about the third one, especially the way it ended. But, and it was like, as we were talking, I'm like, I think I have to stop with my theories on, is it AIM? Is it Hydra? Is it this or is it that? And I couldn't say anything about I wonder if there's more than meets the eye with Geraldine. So much to talk about, but Jeff, let's start with you. Just overall thoughts. You didn't get to talk about last week. You can spend a minute just on the show on the whole, but what you thought about this week's episode 3, as I said, now in color.
Yeah. So the first 2 episodes, I loved it as a Marvel fan because I knew what I was getting myself into. If I was just coming in as a casual fan, it was definitely a slow burn. It was definitely more towards satisfying the sitcom aspects, but I knew what I was getting myself into. I love the characters. I love the romance between Wanda and Vision. So I had fun watching them. And then when it got to, even in the first 2 episodes, there were still small Easter eggs that something more was happening. And then episode 3 happened, and it was a lot more in your face. I love, obviously, the color, but I feel like I'm kind of questioning if I was about to call her Monica. I'm still gonna call her Monica because that's what we know her as. But I'm still kind of questioning, are those 2 the same? Because if Monica from this episode and Monica from the last episode are different, I want to say they might be 2 different Monicas, and I'll explain later.
Okay, no, I mean, I think I do understand what you're saying, but we can certainly delve into all of that. And yeah, Monica is something that I want to talk a lot about because it's the thing I was most excited about was just sort of the realization of her getting to be who we know Monica Rambeau to be. What did you think, just sort of overall, Michael, in terms of this episode 3? Even though, full disclosure, Michael asked me, actually begged me to text him all the spoilers last week. So I did, but you still got to watch it. And what did you think?
Oh my gosh. I just love this episode because we got to see the twins and we kind of been speculating on what was going on with the baby situation. And for those of you that follow along in the comics, the twins were really in the comics, and their names were Tommy and Billy, and they got kind of separated from Wanda after they were born. So that's another something I'm wondering about. But I'm just so excited for these characters who, in the comics, Tommy goes by the codename Speed and is very much kind of like a Quicksilver kind of character. And then you've got Wiccan, who's Billy, and he's got kind of like these Thor Wanda vibes and works with magic. And I'm just really excited to see where this goes. I don't think that Geraldine or Monica or whatever we want to call her, I don't think there's 2 of her. I feel like she's on the up and up. I feel like she's a sword agent, like trying to kind of like see if Wanda's okay. And I think she got spit out of Wanda's like weird little dream world, and all those people that were rushing up at the end were probably like, in my opinion, probably like sword agents, like checking to see if she's okay.
Yeah, I think that second part I agree with. And I think I know where Jeff's coming from with the idea that there's two, which is what we'll dive in a second. Eric, I wanted to give you a moment, though, just sort of overall thoughts, just the episode on the whole, obviously just really inhabiting yet another era of television sitcom greatness.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, that opening song, it started to remind me of, I'm going to guess all four of you know Too Many Cooks, all three of you. If you haven't seen it, Too Many Cooks was done on Adult Swim, and it was just every opening credit ever, basically, in one bizarro 15-minute mashup. And so for a while there, I'm like, this is going really long. And I love the Partridge Family vibe.
Yeah.
So many references, even the architecture referring to the Brady Bunch. So I did get to watch this twice, and I found myself really, pardon the pun, marveling over the production. Like really just almost like soaking it all in the second watch. But yeah, I thought this episode, I've been totally in on this since minute one. And I thought this episode was interesting because it started to try my patience a little bit. Like some of the like shenanigans started to get really broad. And then all of a sudden it does this left turn and it gets deadly serious. And so I was like, this episode's really fascinating. And I'm glad I watched it a second time. I know a couple of people in the chat already talked about that, but really it was just like all of a sudden, like you think it's going to be a slow burn and they're only going to give us a piece of this at a time. But no, the second half of this episode was like, all right, we're pulling back the curtains a lot, and y'all deal with it because that just means there's more curtains to go, which is really exciting. And I mean, again, I'm all in on this thing until the last second of the season. So I thought it was great.
Well, Jeff, what you were saying before about the first two episodes, yeah, you feel like, you know, a lot of the frustration on Twitter and reactions to people who were maybe a little bit more casual Marvel fans was a lot of like, I have no idea what the hell's going on here. And so like a few people that I knew, I wrote back to them. I'm like, no, you're not really supposed to, you know, you're supposed to be lost. Like, I feel like I know a fair amount and I have no idea what's happening here. A lot of theories, a lot of possibilities, but we don't know what's going on. You know, so Jeff, your point about there being two Monicas, I have a theory for what you mean, but why don't I just let you explain what you're thinking? Is that the Monica in this episode, did she replace the Monica that, or, you know, the Geraldine that we saw in the past episodes?
Yeah, I think she replaced her because earlier in the first couple episodes, I'm gonna call her Monica. Monica was very eager to call herself Geraldine, and she seemed confident in that. And also, even though she didn't know why she was there, she knew the atmosphere, she knew the people, and no one really questioned her. And then in this episode, everybody looked at her like, "Yo, is Geraldine in there?" Because you know she has no family, she has no house, like everything's suspect now. It just seemed like too big of a switch, and also like she started asking a lot of questions that were pinpointed. Obviously, when it got more serious. So I was like, maybe they switched her out, and then this is the version that we see in current day, and they literally put her in there in modern day clothing or whatever era clothing that they're in Wanda's.
Yeah, that's definitely like late 60s, early 70s. You know, Eric he invoked the name the Partridge Family, and that's a very Susan Day outfit, I think, that she had on there. And I think that that there's something to be said for that, you know, obviously they're monitoring the simulation and we assume it's Sword. Last week, Michael put out the theory that it's Darcy from the Thor movies, Kat Dennings, who's watching. So, you know, and they would in theory be able to insert people into whatever this is. You know, it seems like it might not be a simulation, you know, it's not, but it might be a little bit more like the Truman Show, you know, where it's a very controlled environment. And a lot of the times where things would rewind in the past episodes, and we did see it in this episode, and Michael, tell me if you think a little bit more this week, it seemed like it could have been somebody monitoring her or controlling the scenario who were like, no, I don't want to send her down that road. But in this episode in particular, it seemed like when it was something that was going to be upsetting to her, that's when it rewound. So it gives the impression that she has kind of created whatever this is, this dream, this artificial reality. What do you think, Michael?
I do think that she's in control of it. I will say there was one point in this episode where it was like a glitch when Vision was talking, and that kind of jarred me, and that kind of made me wonder, was that Wanda or was that something else?
Well, yeah, and it's also like, the watching the first time on a laptop, I would occasionally think like, oh, is there a problem? Like, is my laptop just old and not playing it well, or was that the show? And I'd rewind it. I'm like, oh no, that's the show. But it's a great testament to the fact that, look, a lot of people watch TV very passively these days. And if you're like, looking at your phone and tweeting along and trying to be clever about the show, well, you're going to probably miss some of those finer things. Eric, we've talked about this last week as well, and just sort of what our expectations would be from the trailer. Talk about continuing to kind of play with the medium of television. And if you agree sort of where Michael and I are leaning, that it's an indication that Wanda really is in charge. She is the stage manager, the director, the executive producer, and the studio head who greenlit this show,
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, she is like the in Truman Show, Ed Harris.
Ed Harris, yeah.
Yeah, and it was funny. You brought up that glitch, and I was thinking about, you remember this whole thing with Andy Kaufman, when he did that special, and they did this in Man on the Moon, but like he purposely put in the vertical hold going off on the old TV set. And then he's like, and then people have to go up their TV and they hit it and they go, what's going on here? Well, that's what was so great about that glitch. And what you just said about passively watching, like I did the exact same thing, and it dawned on me, millions of people did what you and I did, which is, wait, did something go wrong? And it literally made us rewind it.
Yeah.
And that's a heck of a trick, to make the audience actually break their stupor and go in and interact with their actual medium. I thought was so brilliant. But as far as the question, the moment to me that really got me, and I was thinking about you, Michael, because of our discussion last week where, not to put words in your mouth, it didn't sound like you were the biggest fan of the casting of Wanda with Elizabeth Olsen, and I was thinking about the moment when she said the two things. She's like, I was a twin, and then also when Vision comes back in the house and she's sent out,
Geraldine / Monica, yeah,
or Geraldine 3 or 2, whichever one she is. And also, I'm like, that's when you really need an actor. Like, actors can deliver those lines and nail them and imbue them with so much. So both those moments, I was curious, Michael, what you thought, honestly, because of our discussion last time.
That whole time, I was thinking, what's this Sokovian lullaby? Like, I was too far in that, thinking about like this silly little thing that they're trying to pretend she does well, but whatever.
It's funny because I was trading direct messages on Twitter with our friend Colt Badeau, who does the tweeting for the show from the Starjammer, as longtime viewers know. And he was like, "Oh, her accent came back." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but only when she sings." It was like the only time you heard it. But I do agree with Eric. I thought that those were two great moments. There's sort of the realization of, I was a twin, and then when she tells Vision, oh, she had to go home now. It was. I did think that both of those were actually fairly interesting because I brought it up because the issue of her accent came up. Michael, what was the article you were talking about before we started? Just take a minute to kind of explain this theory on Wanda's accent.
Yeah. So last week we were talking about, how I thought it was such BS. But because there's been so little screen time for Wanda, a lot of the journalists that are, interviewing her, that's the only real point of reference they have. So they're working with like, okay, so what's with this accent thing? And she's like, oh no, it still very much exists. And I'm playing a 50s housewife right now. And, I was trained by Black Widow. So, I'm sure I've learned how to mask an accent or whatever, and how her Sokovian accent is like the biggest giveaway for her. And I'm like, yeah, right. But I don't know. They say that it's coming back into play and that they're intentionally withholding it now, and then it's not this Halle Berry thing that we had been speculating. They say that
Yeah,
it really
except for
is.
the fact that she didn't have it in Endgame or
Right.
Infinity War, and she didn't have it in Civil War either. You know,
They said
Disney
it's
Plus.
really important.
Oh,
And that
sorry, you
it's
guys spoke at the same time. What was that, Michael?
They said it's really important and that they worked really hard to try to get it to sound similar to Russian and not be Russian. So they
Right.
worked with Slovakian, Melania Trump in the house. So they're like, we worked on this and all these people worked on this and we picked this with Pietro's British accent and my being so perfect at accents, that don't exist.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They say we're going to see it again.
What were you saying, Eric?
Well, maybe she was playing a 50s housewife in Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, and we just didn't realize.
Yeah. On Disney Plus, they have these things called like Marvel Legends or something, and they're little recaps that tie into these shows. There's they're each 7 minutes.
Yeah, I saw it.
And there's a Wanda one and a Vision one, and it just kind of reminds you. And it's like the first 2 minutes she has the accent, and never again does she have the accent. So I don't know. Jeff, you can weigh in on the accent if you like, but
Yeah.
I do also want to kind of talk about the moment we're referencing where you see Geraldine / Monica really deliberating, and she kind of sees this as a moment, and she thinks about it. This is, watching it for the second time today. She was really thinking about it. It's like a full minute, and then she's like, well, Ultron killed your brother, like thinking that this is going to help the situation, when quite the opposite happened. What did you think of that, Jeff?
First off, I'm gonna talk about what I thought about the moment, and then I'll talk about Elizabeth Olsen as a whole. That moment, I loved it because it was something that she messed up on, but it was almost like, you shouldn't say that. Like, that's years down the line. It'd be one thing if she like came back like, oh, you don't remember when you told me about your brother or you mentioned your brother. Like, she just had nothing in return and tried to like go way back. So it was kind of obvious, but with that same token, I love how serious Elizabeth Olsen got right at that moment. Like, you could see the change in her eyes. The tears turned into like from sad to anger and everything. And the fact that you could tell how mad she was there, from the disparity from that to when she was literally her water broke and she was under a table and there was rain. Like, that's some stuff that you would see in like a play or a theater. So you're really acting, really being out, and what's the words? Just being loud. And there's difference between stage acting and regular acting and being dramatic and everything and being on TV. I felt like there was a very wide range of disparity in her acting in this episode.
I don't know that I think she's necessarily.
Yeah, I think that, and you just didn't love the casting. No one less than Kevin Smith tweeted out after watching this episode. He referenced the fact that her acting was so strong in this episode that it's like just give her the Emmy now. But I think that this is why this series had to be attractive, one, to her, but also to Paul Bettany. The idea that you're going to get to really explore these characters, and for Paul Bettany, I mean, you're dead. You really shouldn't get another opportunity to play Vision. So to really dive into it, and yes, you're playing this cartoony version where he eats gum and it gets stuck inside of him. But you really are getting the opportunity over the course of 9 episodes, really examine these characters, which, we were never going to get movies starring Vision or Scarlet Witch. So I think that they have these shows is pretty great. And I mean, I think that Elizabeth Olsen is great for the part, especially in this iteration. I think she's been fine in the movies. And I really thought that Endgame was the first time we really got to see her, show off her powers. But I don't know. I think that we've got some comments in the chat, actually, so I wanted to bring a few of these in here. Daniel Drew says, I think Monica was integrated into this bubble reality. Her mind was captured. Reality bled through. Maybe under Daniel Drew's theory last week she just was there and kind of didn't remember. That's an interesting theory. I think she's very actively like undercover trying to either stop whatever this is or to try and get Wanda out of it. I mean, we have the radio messages in the past episode, like, Wanda, what's going on? What's happening to you? So, and this could be something that Wanda is doing, but not of her own making. This is where we talked about how important the fake commercials are, and Hydra Soak comes in, and of course, just trying to basically clean everything off of your mind. So, that's another place to look. The theory, because of the beekeeper in episode 2, was that AIM was at work. I still feel like Hydra could be at work. But Michael, what do you think? Do you think about either of those things, or do you think that Sword is actually not working in Wanda's best interest? Are they actually working against her here?
I think they want you to think that, but if you know anything about the comics, it's they tried to make S.H.I.E.L.D. look scary in the beginning, so that's just a red herring. But God, I really wanted Hydra to be kind of a thing of the past with like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So when I saw that soap commercial, I was like, why do they keep doing this Hydra stuff? They did like the watch or that. No, they did that stupid Gifted guy watch. Strucker watch.
No, and there were also like newspaper headlines. I think we didn't talk about it last week. Somebody was reading a newspaper and had something about Hydra on the cover. I'd forgotten to mention it last week. In terms of that fake commercial,
watch, the Strucker watch, it had the symbol of Hydra and said something about like Hydra feet, like Hydra, like water resistant or.
No, and again, these could be more red herrings. We talked about this a little bit last week, Eric, in terms of creating those fake commercials. I mean, obviously those must be fun because they evoke the Calgon Take Me Away commercials from the 70s and early 80s. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that has to be the most fun part of putting this show together, like coming up with the fake commercials that tie into, Marvel cinematic lore, right, Eric?
Yeah. Well, it's a chance to sort of double down on this. You're supposed to view this as an episode of TV. So the opening credits with, it doesn't say Elizabeth Olsen, it says Wanda. So they're really just sort of saying, no, this is TV, and the aspect ratio, which one of my favorite moments, honestly, was when the aspect ratio changed. And that was I was so geeking out over that. And I even made an audible gasp, and it was late at night. My dog just barked in the background. It woke him up. I don't think he woke anyone else up, but I was like, I just gasped at a freaking aspect ratio change. And I'm like,
nerd.
My own milk money. Yeah. But yet,
exactly.
It's got us in that reality of this is a show. And so the commercial, even this one, which I thought was a little strange, and maybe you guys caught more in it than I did, but it was funny. Just the other ones, I remember catching all these little details. This one, not as much so. It felt, to your point, Christian, you brought up Calgon, Take Me Away, but that felt more 80s to me than 70s. Yeah. But yet at the same time, and I think, was this a different actress? Right? This was a different actress than the one who was in the last two, or was it the same actress?
Same actress. I didn't feel like the same actress.
Yeah,
her as well.
Okay, yeah, I didn't catch that right away, or at all, I guess. That's why I come here, right? So you guys tell me what I missed.
What do you think is sort of from that aspect, Jeff? The actual, the medium of television on television, sort of being this meta project or that we all consume, where it's like, it's a TV show that knows it's a TV show, even if the people on the TV show don't know they're a TV show. The creators are really turning into the skid, but what do you think about the way that they're handling that in really all three of these episodes?
I agree with Eric. I love it in the fact that they were kind of like giving us a break from the episode, also teasing something. Also, there's clues if you want to take it, or there just could be red herrings, like you're saying. But there's so many things that could have been taken out. and I love it for the fact that you can make so many theories off of it, because yes, she was affected by Hydra, yes, she was affected by Tony Stark, but this could also be what the world, as in like in the 60s, what the world is seeing from Tony Stark Industries or from Hydra. So it could be like, oh, this is what the world thinks of this, but you guys know what really Tony Stark did or what really Hydra did behind the scenes. And I mean, and it could be a nightmare for her, but literally a dream for other people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's so many different ways to go. And by the way, our friend Farad Muhammad pops in. I sometimes gasp, but aspect ratio changes too. Yeah, the amount of letterbox VHS that I bought. I have an entire set of the Star Wars trilogy behind me that are VHS letterbox. But not that I'm a nerd. Michael B had a thought. Okay, do you think Sword can only observe and not interact with the simulation? I don't think they know what the agent's personality will change when they go into it. I think that's an interesting theory, and the way that Monica got spit out shows that they didn't really have control over it. It was just more maybe seeing an opportunity that, like, okay, I can try to get through to her here, and Wanda just wasn't having any of it. I thought that it was interesting, and in terms of playing with conventions and sort of the era that this episode was set, the fact that they gave us Daydream Believer by the Monkees as Monica lands on the ground, I mean, that's not an accident. First of all, it's great usage of music, which I'm always impressed by. And as a little side tangent, as opposed to Wonder Woman 1984, where they set the movie in the 80s and they have half of an 80s song in the whole stupid movie. But anyway, this isn't the time for that, is it? But I think that and obviously you had Yakety Yak in the first episode that was just more for comedic reasons. But look, you agree with Vision, Michael, that's a ridiculous song. But what do you think, Jeff? Sort of using music to actually still continue to tell us part of the story, even though the episode is over, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I love that form of, it's just another form of storytelling, and it's just another art of that. And it reminds me of, I want to say Legion. Legion always had good music that always told stories about the story that was happening in that episode, or teased it, whether it was in the beginning or the end. So I think it's just another form of storytelling, and I love it because it's one of those things that's an Easter egg for people that kind of know, or like, oh, you love it if you know what this is, or it just like flies over your head if you don't. So it's one of those cool things that affect people differently.
Can I jump in on that too, Christian? Because
go ahead.
If you didn't bring up the Monkees, I was going to have to shoehorn it in. This is my shirt. I even have my behind me in my CD collection, between Metallica, Nine Inch Nails, is the Monkees. I went to their last show when it was just Mike and Mickey. I'm all in on Monkees. And this was one of the best uses of Monkees of all time. I mean, this goes up there with Vanilla Sky using Porpoise Song, and Breaking Bad using Going Down. I mean, and for the 7 of you who are Monkees fans, you'll appreciate that. The rest of you, I apologize. But I so love that, and it was pitch perfect. I mean, it was used in the ads, and I didn't necessarily think it was going to swing back around and actually be in the episode. And Jeff, you're right. It's like that as the end note, and that's sort of what you keep with you is kind of cool. Like, because then you have that song in your head, but the sort of the creepier elements of that song, which I didn't necessarily ever think about that song being creepy. Now I will never stop thinking about that song.
Exactly. The idea of a Daydream Believer. Yeah. And I think that, look, we can do a whole show where we analyze the Monkees movie Head. That's when we can really dive into it. But I think that it's great, because when you have Disney at your disposal and you want to license music, it's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, and I think that it really helps sort of the feel for the show. And then some of the other things that I thought this episode, Michael, we didn't get that much of Catherine Hahn, but it was a lot of she's one of the things that people love about this show, but you're going to disagree. But It was clearly, they wanted to tell Vision something, but she just was standing in the way. What did you think sort of that moment as you're watching, Michael? Because that wasn't something I got into with you. That sort of like maybe that the simulation's glitching and he's like using his long clippers on the wall, and Catherine Hahn's character is saying, no, don't. You can't tell him,
I mean, she's a great Mrs. Kravitz. Let's put it that way. That's about all. I don't know. I'm very much like, why are y'all trying to make Catherine Hahn happen ever since, like I was on some AfterBuzz like fashion shows. And I'm like, who is this Catherine Hahn woman? I had to like talk about. I'm like, who is this? Like, she looks silly, or whatever. I just am not on that train. But no, she's a great character actress for this role. That's the neighbors and the people stuck there with them and the doctor. That's the one thing kind of making me question how in control is Wanda.
Yeah.
Like, is she like sedated in some kind of something? That's the only thing that kind of pulls me out of the fact that maybe she's in this like mental cocoon trying to like work out the death of her brother and Vision, and just like kind of fled and started this kind of crazy wave of it seems to me that wherever she is being contained, because when she was shot out of there, Monica Rambeau was covered in like that red glittered kind of dust that you were seeing with that stork earlier in the episode, which I've got to say that was like one of my favorite parts of the show. The stork
was the stork trying to eat the fish on Geraldine's pants.
Yeah, I was dead. Like when he was going for the fish, I was like, you guys just saw everything.
Well, I wanted to talk about Catherine Hahn's character for a moment. And then her name is Agnes. And some people feel like that's an abbreviation for a well-known witch character from the Marvel Universe, best known for the Fantastic Four, Agatha Harkness. Do you think that there's more to who this person is, Jeff? I mean, even if you're not that familiar with that character, do you think that this is actually a much more central figure who's kind of playing a role in the periphery just so she can be the nosy neighbor and kind of see how it's all going?
So I'm going to kind of step back a little bit. During that one scene that we see with Agnes and the other neighbor, I was kind of on the fence. I was like, so who knows this is a fake reality? Because it seems that he does. He knows something's fake. He's like, we're all something. And I'm guessing like we're all fake. We're all dead or something. But he knows. She's trying to stop it. And Vision's the only one that doesn't know. I almost feel like this whole reality is like it's almost like a TV show where the characters know their characters. And Agnes and Wanda are the only people that, or Wanda thinks she's the only one that can control it, but Agnes actually can't control it as well because she is a witch. And I think down the line, Agnes will actually tell her, yes, I'm a witch. And this is how we actually go through with things. Because right now, Wanda's like, I created this by sure hope and dream. And that's why there's cracks. And that's why, and those are the things. And I feel like when Dottie was like, something's weird about you, it wasn't weird that she was a communist or weird that she was a witch. It was weird that she's not falling in line with every other character in the episode. And why I say that Agnes knows this is because she literally says, you're the star of this episode. She knows. She's kind of broken that fourth wall every step of the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And, it could be as simple as these people are all asleep somewhere, including Wanda, and, their consciousnesses are being projected in sort of looking at possible big picture for what might be at store. And I rewatched episodes 1 and 2 last night, because I wanted to kind of take it all in the same short span. And the idea of how important it was, if you remember, we talked about this last week, Michael and Eric, for the children, the importance of the children, and the fact that the children came so quickly. You know, that the 9 months was condensed into like 12 hours, maybe. It does lend something to the fact that someone could very actively want there to be this offspring of Vision and Scarlet Witch. You know, they want these children, and you know, Michael, we've talked about, you brought up who these characters are in the comics at any rate. So, you know, I mean, from the comics, it would be Mephisto, which, boy, that seems like a weird way to introduce basically Satan into the show, is in a Disney Plus limited series, you know?
Well, they did do Hellstrom.
What's that, Michael?
They did do Hellstrom.
Oh, they did do Hellstrom. Yikes. Yeah, that's true. But I think, you know what? I had forgotten about Hellstrom, and that's exactly the way that Kevin Feige wants it to be. He wants us all to forget about Hellstrom. But I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts as you think about this, Eric? You know, I mean, there's that theory, and we did talk about it last week, but it sort of came up again as I was thinking about, you know, like, boy, these kids sure showed up really fast.
Yeah, you know, one thing that kind of hit me with this episode was all of a sudden, like, I actually started feeling a weird sadness for Wanda, because I began to realize, like, towards the back half of this is really about like trauma and mourning. Like, she's in essence created, or she or someone really does feel like she has some control over this, even if she's being manipulated to have that control. She brought back her great love. You know, in some ways, she brings back, so to speak, her brother by having a kid who's gonna, you know, have his powers. Like, and so I realized, like, this thing, suddenly the themes of it got really interesting and rich and deep when you realize, like, in essence, she's willingly or not has constructed her perfect place, like her utopia. Like, I don't know, they always do this in comics and sci-fi, like the Nexus, I think it was called, in Star Trek Generations.
Generations, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, like, as I'm watching this, so I agree. Agnes, Agnes is doing something, it feels like, to Wanda, with the idea that Wanda is you know, it might be her story, she might be the hero, but she's also causing so much of his problems. I mean, she lied to Vision at the end of this episode, and I really like that moment where Agnes, and I totally blanking the other guy's name. When
the other neighbor,
by the way, the first moment that was like, all right, this is weird, is he's literally cutting the wall.
Yeah.
Great visual, you know?
Yeah.
But they were trying to put a bug in Vision's ear that he shouldn't trust
Geraldine / Monica. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, right, that idea that, yeah, clearly there's a few puppet strings maybe going around here. Wanda's got maybe most of them, but then Agnes potentially has the one on Wanda. So that moment alone, I was like, that's interesting. And then it doesn't really play out, which I thought was also kind of cool. The writers being a good 2 steps ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think the idea of warning him about her it lends itself to this idea that she has somehow infiltrated whatever this is and trying to help Wanda in some way, even though it doesn't work out that way. I wanted to bring in this comment from Sky the Boss 96. The Agnes character definitely knows what the world and reality within WandaVision is under her control. She's probably working with Mojo and Sword. The reference of Mojo, I don't think that they're so immersed with the previously Fox-owned X-Men characters that Mojo would be at play here. But if there was ever to be somebody that was running a TV simulation from Marvel Comics, it would definitely be Mojo. I just don't think that we're actually going to get that. You know, I mean, we've sort of danced around this a few times, Jeff. Are there specific thoughts that you have for what this is? And whether it ends up next week at this time, you might be like, oh, that wasn't right at all. What do you think? Is there something that you hope is what this is?
Yeah, I just think it's a reality that Wanda made out of desperate need for family. You know what I'm saying? Like, from the start, it's been everything that her and Vision wanted. They're like, oh, we're not married. Well, let's fix that. Oh, we're not a family. Well, let's fix that. Like, she kind of controlled everything that her heart really settled for her. So, like, that's where I think that she's in. And I think that she's just so young in her magic abilities that she can't control everything about this. So that's why there might be other people in there, as in Agnes, who can kind of control more because she's a stronger witch. And I love the visual aspect of like right when Monica is thrown out, or right when Monica is thrown out, you see the lights and you see like the whole campus. But like, you remember when you first see Wakanda, you're like going in through the rocks, and then it just bursts
sure.
like the whole city. It kind of gave me those same vibes, because right where the trees were starting, the colors were different, the lighting was different, and it kind of gave me that same like, you're gonna go in there and it's gonna be totally different. So it was really cool to see visually, but I think it's all in Wanda's creative mind. Like it's a physical land, because it looked like they took over some city and you can't literally go in the city anymore. But I think the reality is all in her head.
Yeah, no, I think that there's definitely something to be said for that. And I think that whether it's willingly or because of some outside influence, that she does have a large degree of control over this. How they're able to monitor it, that part, will remain to be seen. William Walton has a comment that for fans of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and fans who know how I feel about certain storylines in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. references, as long as they're not in the framework, I'm okay with it. That there was a storyline that turned me off of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for basically an entire year, and I had to catch up to see the episodes I wanted to. But in any case, I think that... Look, I hope we get some more answers next week. I don't know how forthcoming they're going to be. I think that we did get a lot, as Eric referenced, in the second half of this episode, and it was a little bit darker, in terms of a lot of what they gave us and just where it's heading, and you kind of see the severity of all of this. We've been talking about Monica Rambeau being shown in here, and obviously that character was introduced in Marvel Comics Amazing Spider-Man Annual 16, thank you, as Captain Marvel at one point. And what I was texting with Michael about this is they figured out a way to give her hair from the comic books, because it was set, when she was introduced in the comic books, because it was set in sort of the late 60s, early 70s, whenever that nebulous sort of period is. And I thought the visual was great. She did have the sword necklace, which I don't know, I guess maybe that was something subconsciously trying to trigger something. What I love about a show like this is that we could all talk about this every day until the next episode, and we could spend an hour and we could theorize, and we could come nowhere near where any of it was, and hopefully at least come up with something that's very satisfactory. I think that we've talked about the theme songs, we've talked about the fake commercials, sort of using the elements of fast forward. We even talked about aspect ratio, just playing with television. I think that they do a great job on this. And, I watched the first two last night with my wife, who hadn't seen them previously. And, I think any of the little like Marvel nuances are lost on her. But I think in general, people can watch this show. But it's frustrating because, Eric, do you think that they run the risk of people thinking that they should know more, even though those of us who do know a fair amount can tell them, like, no, you're supposed to be lost, at least for these 3 episodes?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think, like I watched this, as mentioned, with my kids, and as much as my kids love Marvel, like they didn't read comics 30 years ago. Like some of us might have, those who are old enough to have read 30 years ago. And I think I think this show, and really the movies too, have always done that well. They've always been for everyone. And so in essence, if you read the comics, seen the cartoons, et cetera, yeah, you're going to have a deeper appreciation for it. But if they only played to that part of the crowd, obviously we'd be happy, but they wouldn't have that much money. It'd be the difference between making $1 billion and making $150 million. And Disney's smart about it, but really Kevin Feige is smart. He is, his hand on this, the fact that so much of this came from him and his desire to sort of, delve into like old Nick at Night reruns that he grew up watching, like I did, like you might have as well, Christian. He found a way to like do a show that can be sort of for everyone. And if you don't get all of it, that's cool. If you get all of it, great. I mean, the fact that we could speak for like an hour about a show that's only a half hour.
Yeah. Well, three of us worked for a network that was basically built on that principle, where you could talk about a show longer than the actual episode was. Farad Muhammad comes in again. The end credits are a love letter to the cathode ray tube era of TV screens. Absolutely. I do sort of love that. And I love the usage of static, for changing the channels, or the old way that channels changed, before cable or digital or anything. And it is those little touches. And, I said this last week, that it's people who love television making basically, it is a comic book story, but it's at the same time, it's a love letter for television. So, I am, of course, very much enjoying it, and can't wait to see where it goes. And I can't say with any kind of authority that I'm like, oh, it has to be this. It can be so many different things. And there are characters that we've heard rumors, that Evan Peters is going to be on this show, and he played the good Quicksilver from the X-Men movies. Say what you will about the X-Men movies, but they gave us a good Quicksilver, and there were two great Quicksilver sequences in both Days of Future Past, and I guess the other one was an Apocalypse. So I think that the idea that we could see him, and the idea that maybe he is playing Pietro, ties into something that Sky the Boss mentions, that WandaVision is somehow tied to John Watts' third Spider-Man film and tied into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Maybe she's the rebirth of the X gene and source to other worlds, and that if they bring in mutants and they bring in some of the X characters, they wouldn't necessarily be starting from scratch and sort of like, oh yeah, these existed in another reality. All of these
like a backwards House of M.
Yeah, I think that, instead of no more mutants, instead she's like, how about all the mutants?
I don't know about that.
Well, I'm just saying but I like that theory, the backwards House of M. She kind of brings about mutants. But again, something this significant, you're like, are they really going to do this on a Disney Plus series? And the answer is maybe they are. I don't really know. I wanted to and I think, by the way, this really sums up from our friend Ghost8386, who I always bring up his comments because of how much I love his avatar. Awesome and creepy episode. Very creepy at times. And, you have a lot of those other things. Oh, this is interesting. I didn't even get this at all. So the neighbor whose name we both keep searching for is Herb. Could the neighbor Herb be Herbert Wyndham, a.k.a. the High Evolutionary? That is digging deep. And I love that sort of thinking because, Lawrence, I can't say I thought of the High Evolutionary at all, but that is very interesting. I actually didn't remember that his name was Herbert. I just knew that he was the High Evolutionary, and that's somebody that I'll have to, we would all have to like Google a little bit. But I mean, I remember, Marvel had a summer event once that was the Evolutionary War, and the High Evolutionary factored into that. And, he would definitely be someone who is very interested in the well-being of the Maximoff twins because I believe sort of the creature that he increased the evolution of that was actually their mother, who would have, they're in the comics, their father's Magneto. And I think a lot of people know that, but we don't go anywhere near that in the MCU for obvious reasons.
I've read that they're gonna.
Well, now they can, but when they introduced these characters in Ultron, they probably couldn't even say the name Magneto, and yet in Days of Future Past, they're in Quicksilver's living room, and his little sister is, I guess they're the same age, but they didn't seem to be the same age, but she was watching TV and that was his sister there, so you're like, oh my God, that's Scarlet Witch. So, it had to be a little bit more subtle.
I don't know why you always say Evan Peters is the good Quicksilver.
Because he was.
Because he's not. Because Nowhere Boy was not effective at all.
Okay.
Hey, you know what we know about speedsters in comic books? They're faster than a speeding bullet. Okay, then how the hell did Quicksilver die from a bullet wound?
I think you're totally getting it twisted. I'm saying that we've never had a good Quicksilver, but you also know Quicksilver's probably my favorite male mutant.
Who do you think play him? Like if you had your dream casting, like who would you throw in that role?
Like the guy that played Magneto in the first movie would have been a really good one. What's his name?
Ian McKellen?
No, the in the first class, the second.
Oh, I was confused too. I was like, wait, what?
I could never remember that guy's name.
Michael
But
Fassbender.
the guy that's supposed to play the original Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
I mean, someone with a really pointy face. I haven't really thought about it very well, but I don't know. I think the Kick-Ass guy, Aaron or whatever, I felt like he kind of looked like him a little bit. Maybe not skinny enough, but I feel like Evan Peters in no way looks like. But that's usually my problem. Usually the physicality of what I've seen drawn in the comics ever since like the 80s when I was a kid, you know.
Well, Ghost 8386 was also not a fan of the Impulse Quicksilver in the Fox universe. Key Files points out, aren't characters introduced in these series supposed to eventually show up in the future movies? Yes, absolutely. And I think that sort of will help. I mean, it's how you'll end up getting, you know, a Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel in Avengers movies. We'll at least know her ahead of time, you know, because she'll have her show. You know, I'm sure She-Hulk will show up in movies at some point. You know, I think that it's very important that these feel like they're connected, because
I'm hoping these twins are going to grow up really quick and we're going to see them in the new Avengers.
I assume that's another reason why they had them be birthed in one episode, to show that they can kind of grow fast. So we can not even think about it when it gets to 2020, whatever year they're in now, 2025 or whatever.
Yeah, 2025.
I think they're going to be teenagers, which is kind of going to be weird, because if they're growing fast, they'd be like 50 by that time. But either way, somehow it's going to be teenagers.
Well,
I think
it works.
Just be okay with it.
It works in Star Wars because Baby Yoda's 50, so it's fine. Right. You know, so you can
Yoda though, right?
Yeah, he's not Yoda.
Wait, you're talking about something totally different.
Yeah, he's not Yoda. No. But anyway, well, again, the great thing about this show is that we could keep talking about it for another hour. And the beauty is we will. It'll be next week. But before we go, I wanted to touch on a story that is perpetually in the news ever since the pandemic started, and is this idea that that Black Widow is rumored to be moving again. A lot of movies have moved in the last few weeks, including James Bond moving to October. So now scheduled, the James Bond film scheduled to come out a year and a half after it was supposed to. And I can't give credit to it because I forget who said it, but somebody said, might as well call it, the title of the film is No Time to Die. Might as well call it No Time to Care, because by that point it's like, who needs this? And then it was somebody who identified themselves as a big James Bond fan. And, you know, go ahead, Michael.
They did the same thing with New Mutants, and that movie got more money than it ever had a prayer getting because of the time they put it out.
Wow.
When no one else would touch a movie theater. They're like,
this is like pandemic for that to make money.
Yeah, it needed. Yeah, well, here's the thing. What I will say is the only way that New Mutants ever would have been the top grossing film in any weekend was during a pandemic. Yes, and I contributed $20 to that by going to see it at the drive-in with my wife. So this idea that and Jeff, you went to the Rose Bowl drive-in to see it.
Yeah, right? I did too. I just wanted to put a +1. There's nothing to talk about. It was a movie.
Were you able to even see any of the scenes that were shot at night? Because Christian and I weren't.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was, the whole movie wasn't even that great, let alone like just the dark spots. Like, I was like, okay, so this is just, I'm just gonna eat my popcorn and enjoy a film. Like, I didn't go in there with any expectations. When I got there and saw it, I had less expectations. So like, it is what it is.
But I put this on Twitter. I'll say it again. It was the best superhero movie of 2020 because the only superhero movies of 2020 were New Mutants, Wonder Woman 1984, and Birds of Prey. And the best thing about Birds of Prey was the breakfast sandwich that Harley Quinn dropped, because every time I think about that, I'm like, God, I'd love to eat that breakfast sandwich. Anyway, that definitely veered off topic a little bit. Just a little bit. Not yet. So this idea that Black Widow might move again because the thinking that the world was going to be fine by May suddenly seems like, oh, you know what, we're getting closer to it, but May seems a little optimistic. And Marvel's got a backlog of 4 movies, 5 if you count Spider-Man 3, which so it would cause a domino effect even if it moved to July, where I think Shang-Chi is before Eternals, and Eternals is in November. So you can do that again, but at some point, I just think that they spent so much money on this movie that there is no upside to them for putting this movie, whether it be video on demand or putting it on Disney Plus the way they did with Mulan, where you have to pay extra to get it, and you can only stream it, you can't really own it. I don't think that really benefits them. I said on this show that it makes sense for Warner Brothers to give all their movies away on HBO Max because no one really wants HBO Max. People are like, oh my God, what do I need Friends reruns for? And I think that Disney Plus, they have enough stuff that they feel like they're going to keep you in it, especially enough Marvel stuff, because you're going to have all these shows. Their shows are basically all going to roll into each other in terms of, you won't have time to cancel your subscription before Falcon and Winter Soldier, before Loki, before whatever.
Oh yeah, they're definitely planning all that.
Yeah. So I think that even if it's not until 2022, this movie is not going to be something that you get to watch first in your home because of the economics of it. I stand by that. I said that about Wonder Woman 1984, but apparently I gave too much credit. I think that once you saw the movie, you're like, oh, that's why they gave it away for free. Okay, now I get it. But what do you think, Jeff? Do you think that Black Widow should come out digitally? You could talk about it from a fan perspective, but from a business standpoint, what do you think makes the most sense for Disney to do here?
For a business perspective, you have to bite the bullet and put it on Disney Plus. You have so many things in development. You have so many things that's already being aired. You established this was supposed to come out before Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So like we might be getting teasers, Easter eggs, spoilers in that TV show, let alone any other things like Loki and What If and WandaVision. There's so many things that could have tied into the Black Widow movie. I feel like they just need to get it out and unfortunately move past it in a sense, but like it's gonna do great. We know all Marvel movies do. It's just unfortunate. And if anything, just do it's in theaters and it's on Disney Plus, because I promise you, if I have that vaccine by July, like I will be in that theater. So just push it back to July and just move everything like a month more or something. But don't get Morbius January of 2022, because that's just ridiculous.
No, I can see the value in just moving it a little bit. I don't know. What do you think, Eric? Do you think that from a Disney standpoint, I think that what they have is more valuable when you can charge people, box office, theatrical prices.
Yeah, I mean that's when you get potentially. I don't know if this one would quite make $1 billion worldwide, but when you get hundreds and hundreds of million, but Jeff, I think is totally right. Like they have a queue, and we're not exactly sure how Black Widow would feed into these things, but to put at some point it's like it's going to get pushed back, and then so what? Black Widow is going to cannibalize, the release of one of the other movies. That doesn't make much sense. And
to jump on that, like the new Black Widow is supposed to be in other movies, upcoming TV shows and movies. So it's like characters from that movie are important. We need that to hurry up and come down the line. They're shooting Secret Invasions in April. Like it's just like they have so much stuff already coming. You need to hurry up.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's going to gum up the works, and they have so much money already.
Vision.
They're going to have to market.
Yes, exactly.
Right. I think the belly. They're gonna have to like market it again and again and again. Yeah. I think at some point you're right. It's just like, all right, we have Disney Plus, charging $20 extra, people will do it. Maybe put it at drive-ins and make it a thing. Like it'd be the number one gross drive-in movie since like I don't know, Blob or one of those. Like it has that potential. So they could make a real event out of the drive-ins and get some money that way. But I agree. I think it is time to put it out there and move forward.
Well, and I think that the fact that it's set in an earlier era, it's like not part of the current continuity, and you have this movie that keeps slowing everything down. I can understand that. Obviously, they wouldn't. The movie Black Widow is set right after Civil War, And that's exactly when they should have made this movie to begin with. So if it had only come out then, they wouldn't have this problem. And if it wasn't the Black Widow movie, I think people would be like, oh, Eternals and Shang-Chi have to move again. Okay, yeah, those are probably good, but it'll be fine. Instead you have this like, oh, we finally get her own movie and we've had to wait an extra year for it. I don't know, Michael, you prefer not to go to the movie theaters when there is no global pandemic. So you would rather if they want to make it available only on the Apple Watch and you have to watch it, like about this big, you're fine with that too, right?
All I gotta say is if you want to see Black Widow drop on Disney Plus, jump to 1 hour, 52 minutes, and 50 seconds in Avengers Endgame.
Okay, there you go. That's it. That's how you can see her. All right. Well, thank you to everybody in the chat. We always have so much fun talking about this show and any other Marvel news. We will be back next Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific. Yes, that is 5 p.m. Eastern. And please continue the conversation. You can continue if you're not watching live and you're watching the archive version. Leave comments. I always like to get into it. That sounds hostile, but I like to talk back and forth with people who enjoy the show. And we'll be back next week. Until then, Jeff, where can people find you?
Yeah, as you can see right this side, at Jeff Will Jr. on all your social media platforms.
And Count Eric Connor, that is where people can find you. Twitter, Instagram. I think I already said last week, Friendster, MySpace.
Oh yeah,
or not.
Well, chat rooms.
That's also your CB radio handle, Breaker.
Yeah, me and Smokey go down the boulevard together with that.
Yeah. I don't hate Michael Shirley, but if you want to find him, I hate Michael Shirley on Instagram.
Yeah, or just look in Wanda's living room.
Yeah, which I love that you're back in Wanda's living room. And of course on Twitter, Michael.
Yeah, Michael X Shirley on Twitter. It won't add extra characters for me to have the same handle on both.
And by the way, my faceless vision toy for my kids still here. This is my totem for all these episodes.
I love it. I love that he's always
very appropriate. Given.
Well, thank you to everyone. We will see you next week. And as the great Stan Lee would always say, Excelsior!